Iowa State may have lost the commitment from Jet Tamala, that four-star quarterback. Yeah, it hurts. I'm still mourning a little bit, but we got to move on because Iowa State just landed probably its biggest commitment of all time, question mark? We're talking about today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we are breaking down two separate commits to Iowa State in this 2026 class. I do think this first one will be a major addition for the Cyclones, and obviously the second one as well. But this first one we are leading the show off here with for good reason, in my opinion. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some ideas that are being thrown around about this college football playoff model that could change your mind, because I think my mind may actually be changed. Not quite sure yet. We'll dive into that in the third segment. Can't wait to get into it. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, I start off the show by saying we lost Jet Tamala. I get it. It hurts. It was a big recruit for Iowa State. I still think Iowa State's going to be just fine. Why? Because we've got this recruiting thing figured out. I'm not even joking. It's just blow after blow after blow. Big recruits. That's what Iowa State is now. It's a big recruiting school, okay? The recruit we're going to talk about first today, we've got two. I know, we've got two. The first one, Lucas Tenbrock, okay? If you don't know the name, you should probably learn it because he'll probably be playing for your favorite NFL team in just a few years. Former Iowa State Cyclone. Has committed to Iowa State in the class of 2026 from St. Charles North High School. This dude, what does he do? He's a punter. Yeah, I know. Don't click off the video. Promise. This is legit, okay? 6'6". I'm going off of his Twitter bio here. He's got 240 listed on his Twitter. 24/7 has him listed at 220. I'm going to go with the Twitter bio here. I don't think 24/7 is checking the scale every day. I'm pretty sure Lucas Tenbrock is the one standing over the scale, seeing the number there. I don't even know. I think my internet broke. He has a 5.15 GPA. Did they change the GPA scale, or is this kid just built different? It's unbelievable. And this is where it gets juicy. I mean, I'm looking at these numbers, and so I apologize for the pause because like these numbers are astounding. Number 1 punter and the number 22 kicker in the class of 2026. Okay, now that is a big deal. It is. I'm not even like playing this up. I swear to you, this is legitimately super important. Okay, and I'll get into more on that in just a second. Obviously, this is huge. Number 1 punter, and then ranked a little bit lower based on this ranking from Saylor at 27 for a kicker. I don't care. I do not care. This is a monumental pickup by Iowa State. The special teams is forgotten about too often, and I'm never one to forget about it, because I was a snapper back when I had the pleasure to play football. And so that was really the only thing I knew was special teams. Now, obviously, I know offense, defense. I knew it at the time I played it, but I wasn't a starter by any means. I was the guy when it's third down. I'm like, are we going to get this first down? What's the deal? Right? What's our plan of attack here? I'm not going to dive into 2A college or 2A high school football long snapper mentality here. But the point is, I always appreciate myself some good special teams. And I think a lot of people, sometimes myself included, get very tied into the offense and defense. Who has better O, who has a better D, and who, that's going to dictate who's going to win the game. Maybe who has the better coach potentially is tied in there as well. I think a lot of people forget about special teams because a lot of times it doesn't make the most noticeable impact on the game. You've got kick returns. You got punt returns. Caden Weegan over at Iowa, punt return dude. He's got it figured out. He's got the vision. He's got the speed former Williamsburg High School grad. Shout out. I'm not shouting out the University of Iowa, just Caden Weechen, just so we're clear. The special teams does have the ability to make a large impact on the game in a single play, but a lot of people forget that this is more than just scoring on wild plays that make SportsCenter top 10. It's more than just that. This is the field position game, excuse me. This is miniature points like the field goals that you pick up over time. How did Iowa State beat Iowa last season? You guys remember? Was it a field goal? Oh, it was. I mean, you pick up a 3, and most of the time everyone's disappointed we didn't score a touchdown. I get it. I'm the same way. But guess what? If you have a guy who can't kick, maybe you don't kick. Maybe you go for it on 4th down. Maybe 60% of the time you just turn it over. You come away with no points. Do you want that? No. No, you really don't. The field position game is a game within a game. Very serious. And the big I was trying to not say this, but every time I think of Iowa State special teams, I get tight. I get very tense. I hold my breath. I am not joking. Literally every punt. I think we can all know why. There's one punt in particular stands out of my brain. Okay. If it's not ringing a bell, think back to Iowa and think back to friendly fire. It's just a part of me now. Iowa State and special teams, I just get so nervous. And if we can have this kind of punter and Conrarty and now obviously he kicks as well does this Tenbrock, this is a step in the right direction where we can start to breathe during punts and kicks. Okay. This is the step towards security that helps Iowa State in the long run. Okay. A lot of people think, oh, you need a really good quarterback. Oh, you need a really good wide receiver for them to throw to. Oh, you need a really good line so you can run through them with a mediocre level running back. And if you get a top tier running back, that's going to put you apart. You need an excellent secondary to be able to shut down the other team's passing attack. You need the rush. What you really need is stability. You really need a special teams unit that you can wheel out on the field and feel confident in. Just even if it's as simple as we're not going to turn the ball over, which should be the bare minimum. But personally, there are times where I am just like, it feels like it's going to happen. I don't know what it is. Most of the time I'm wrong. And I just finally can let air out of my lungs, but not always, because that's what special teams is. It's a very weird, difficult portion of the game, and games can be won or lost there. So this pickup of Lucas Tenbrock, don't sleep on it. And especially the fact that he's the number one punter in the class 2026. Huge pickup for Iowa State here. There is one other thing I will bring up, but I'm going to do it right after this as we start to talk about our second recruit we're talking about today on Locked On Cyclones. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in just one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan those long-term goals. And speaking of long-term goals, my favorite feature is tracking with your partner. You can track those long-term goals, but also shared and personal accounts. Stay on the same page with zero stress. It's the best. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. So Iowa State getting a star-studded punter might not turn the heads of a lot of people. I get it. I understand that. You're looking at all these recruits Iowa State's pulling in, and a punter comes across the screen, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. Good deal. Who else? Is that it? I get it, okay? I understand it. I hate to bring up Iowa for a second time in a single episode, but anyone remember Torrey Taylor? Anyone remember how he had like more punting yards than Iowa State's total offensive yards? Now, that's an extreme case, but punters can be legitimate pieces in games. And I just talked about that for like the whole first segment. I really wanted to clarify that. And I do think that Tenbrock can make a huge impact on Iowa State. However, I will throw this in here. Iowa State was Tenbrock's first and only offer earlier this week on June 15th, per Cyclone Fanatic here. That is almost alarming to me. That's pretty surprising, actually, for sure. So we'll see how that whole situation shapes up. I do think that there is an element of once Iowa State kind of latches onto a guy, shows some interest, other schools are like, oh yeah, Iowa State's really good at everything. Let's go ahead and take a look at this guy. And I do wonder, we've seen a lot of that. We've seen a lot of that this year. It's because Iowa State's really, really good now. Really, really good. One thing Iowa State was unbelievable at last year was pass defense. And I know we've talked about the defense a lot, not exactly in the most kind light, I will say. I think there's a lot of upside for this year, but a lot of that upside comes from the fact that last year was kind of a weird year and a lot of those guys were injured. So now we're getting them back and we're going to be better. Like, obviously, that's a part of it. The secondary, however, was unreal last year. Iowa State was very, 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 very good at defending the pass. All on top of the fact that the defensive line really wasn't doing a whole lot. I mean, it really wasn't. It was my main takeaway from a lot of games. And I do think that the defensive line will get better this year, but this is not really a topic about this year. This is a topic about 2026 because Iowa State just secured another big recruiting win here, another big commitment from a defensive back. Yeah, you heard it here just now. Iowa State secures a commitment from Bryson Williams, 3-star safety defensive back, whatever you want to title him. Standing 6'4", 13th ranked recruit in the state of Nebraska. Iowa State is kind of killing it in the state of Nebraska. Obviously, Jet Tamala, not currently, I guess, committed to Iowa State is how I will put it. And so that takes a hit as far as Iowa State pulling guys from Nebraska. Nonetheless, seems like there is an element of Iowa State going into Nebraska and figuring out, hey, can we bring these guys home? Let's bring them back to Ames where there's really good corn here. And I love it. I love it. Now, what can he do for Iowa State? Obviously, the lankiness is going to be huge. Great size, solid player, a guy that, you know, it's not necessarily the most flashy pickup. It's not a 4-star or a number 1 punter. I get it. You want to treat all these guys kind of as a blank slate when they're coming into college, because in theory, you could have a number 1 ranked anything that it just doesn't translate. It's really rare, but it could happen. So you kind of have to treat it like a blank slate, which is why I'm excited just about the size. For one, I do think that Iowa State's defensive kind of coaching philosophy is one that it tailors itself well to these athletes. Obviously, we all know DP goes to the NFL from last year, goes from wide receiver to DB. Benny Ngoye, a guy this year that could really turn some heads in that same kind of wide receiver to defensive back transition. I think it's a great sign for what Iowa State's capable of doing in the secondary. And last year, like I said, we've actually talked about it multiple times recently, how good Iowa State was, especially relative, like top of the Big 12 and unbelievable in the entire college football landscape. Really what I was kind of hanging my hat on going into the Big 12 championship game. I thought if Iowa State can just completely shut down the pass as they should be able to, then we can start to deal with Scatterboo. That was kind of my mentality. And that's how good Iowa State's the safety room was, I guess, secondary was last year. They were unreal. I believe they were 3rd in the country going into the Big 12 championship game, if I remember correctly. I don't have that stat up, but I think it was something like that. And I think that level of success is going to draw in these future athletes. And that's where I do wonder if Iowa State is starting to get to that point as a school where it's going to start clicking. This kind of idea, this concept of compound interest, where if you haven't heard of it, basically the more you have, the more you make kind of situation. So the better you are, the more people want to come and play for you. Now, it doesn't help necessarily that our athletic director is telling everyone we're absolutely in a terrible spot, but that's a conversation for a different day and a conversation we've already had. actually. But from a truly just how good is this school or team at football perspective, I think we're starting to see the upswing and on the team level. But then when you look at how successful this unit can be, you start to see high level quarterback play from Iowa State in the NFL, right? Obviously, Brock Purdy, the first one that comes to mind, makes complete sense there. Hunter Decker's now with the Saints, former Cyclone, I think was what we've kind of settled on. He can be considered a Cyclone. I think Rocco Becht is going to be very good on Sundays, right? You're starting to see a pattern. You're starting to see wide receiver patterns potentially, running back patterns potentially. Iowa State's starting to gain steam. To me, it doesn't feel like Iowa State is just some school out in the middle of Iowa that's close to Des Moines, and oh yeah, they play football. It doesn't feel like that anymore, at least to me. It does feel like Iowa State is starting to figure some things out. You get to 10 wins. You surpass 10 wins for the first, well, you get to for the first time, and then surpass for the first time again, 10 wins in a season. You win the Pop-Tart Bowl. You get to eat the mascot out of the giant toaster over an ACC school that had the number 1 overall pick in the entire NFL draft. I understand he didn't play the second half, but you're starting to see the success, and it's coming with Campbell, of course, and his coaching stint here at Iowa State, and hopefully it's forever. I would love it to be forever. But you're starting to see it, and you're also starting to see kind of the consistency of Campbell sticking around, because we've seen multiple times now that Campbell could potentially leave, decides to stay, and what characteristics he puts as extremely important into his teams, right? That it's starting to become abundantly clear what it means to go to Iowa State. And what it means to go to Iowa State is starting to also mean good football, great football, developmental football, a path to get to the league. That's what it's starting to mean. And that's a huge deal when you're trying to recruit kids who have the ultimate dream of going to the NFL. It's just that simple. It really does kind of just boil down to the fact that these kids want to win in college. Duh. These kids want to make it to the NFL. Duh. And they want to be really good doing it. Duh. Okay. Well, if Iowa State can check all those boxes, come to Iowa State. What's stopping you? So as you get better, and I think Iowa State's built the program the right way, on top of that, which we didn't even touch on, you start to get better recruits. You do. And I think we're starting to see that here with this big pickup at defensive back. Obviously, the big pickup at punter. I think the commitment from Jet Tamala, at the very least, shows quite a bit of promise for the future. I know that it didn't quite pan out in the way that we all maybe thought it would, but I think it does show quite a bit of promise. Then you look at the entire class as a whole, and Iowa State is killing it. I think this is the best class under Campbell we've had, and it makes complete sense. It really does. Now, could that success be sustained into the future is the question. And what does the future look like? What is good for Iowa State? We'll talk about that coming up right after this. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm glad you're here because we need to talk about, you guessed it, college football playoff, just because it kind of hangs in limbo. We're not really sure what's going to happen here. Let me know in the comments down below, or at Nick_Marv on Twitter, if that's your vibe, what you think will happen. And then also what you want to happen. What is the best case scenario? Because I have been very adamant about the 5+11 model. I have. I'll be completely candid. And I don't take back a word I said. I think that the 5+11 model, or I certainly did think, with maybe my narrow-minded mindset, that the 5+11 model was the best for college athletics. I guess the best for college football. It doesn't really affect the swim dive team, or even the basketball team, for that matter. Maybe a little bit. Actually, it probably does, based on revenue. Anyways, I'm getting a little bit off track here. Why do I bring this up? Well, for one thing, there were some comments made, and I'll touch on those in a second, in two kind of realms. The first being that Brett Bielema, the Illinois head coach, doesn't think we're probably going to get to a 16-team playoff. It doesn't really look like that. He thinks it's because of the SEC. and the 9 conference games. The comments that he made, I think they're interesting. He said, quote, "I don't think that there's any way we could do a 16-team playoff if the SEC is not at 9 conference games. We voted unanimously as Big Ten coaches to stay at 9 and actually maybe have an SEC challenge. I was told that they voted unanimously to stay at 8 and not to play the Big Ten. But then some people pop off and say what they want to say because they want to look a certain way." A lot to unpack here. We don't need to get too crazy because this isn't related to our conference, but it is related because the SEC and the Big Ten, they have all the cards. They make all the decisions when it comes to the college football playoff. So please bear with me here. It really does boil down, it seems like, to whether or not the SEC will play 9 conference games. That does kind of seem to be the pivoting point here. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know for sure, but I do know that if that 16-team playoff format kind of goes through, and then we move to 9 conference games, then we move to play-in games, that we'll probably be looking at the 4-4-2-2-1-1 model, likely. 4 automatic bids from the SEC, 4 automatic bids from the Big Ten. That'd be 2 from the ACC, 2 from the Big 12, and then 4-4-2-2-1. That extra one would be a non-power 4 conference team, and then if Notre Dame was ranked in the top 16, and then basically the rest are at large if there are any. And to be completely honest, like I said, I will be transparent. I was not a fan of that. I thought that that was completely unfair that a conference or 2 conferences would be guaranteed more spots than other conferences of the seemingly same level. I think that it's just not fair. Doesn't make any sense. If we're all in this Power 4 conference in the same level, why are you getting more than we are? And I still stand by that. I still think that that's a fair assessment to make. I do think that they should probably be even across the conferences. However, I don't know if I necessarily think that the 5+11 solves that issue of making this as fair as we can for the entire sport. Why, you ask? Well, I am going to credit Josh Pate, I believe, of the Josh Pate College Football Show, for bringing this up. But as soon as he said it, I turned it off because I wanted my own brain to have thoughts. Basically saying that at 5+11, we're going to see so many SEC schools because they're going to have a card in the hand, essentially, for who is decided to go to the college football playoff. And they're gonna move to this 9 conference games, which they probably wouldn't with the 5+11. But if they did, it's just, well, the SEC is so much harder. It's hard to really quantify these losses, so we kind of just got to lean their way. You end up with a playoff where you've got an automatic SEC and then maybe 7 other SEC schools. So you have 8 total SEC schools in a 16-team playoff or whatever. Is that good? Probably not ideal. It's probably not great. So I did have to do some thinking. Not so much for the sport as a whole, but for Iowa State, what would be the best case scenario? Under that idea that the SEC would be able to dominate the at-large bids, which I do think is a valid argument. I absolutely do, and I give all the credit there. I think that makes complete sense. It's something that I completely overlooked. I was living in this utopia where it's just everyone is treated completely fairly and equally, and it makes sense. Everything works according to plan. I don't know what made me get there. I don't know why I was in that universe, but that was kind of the mindset I was under. When we bring it back down to reality a little bit and realize that there's probably a pretty reasonable chance that that's not what's going to happen, I am now potentially, I think that it would be better for Iowa State under the 5+11, or no, wow. No. Under the 4-4-2-2-1 model. Now, I say that by, you got to also take into account here, I don't necessarily mean that. I mean not the 5+11 model. I would like it to be a 3-3-3-3. I think that actually makes more sense than 4-4-2-2-1 It's never going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry to break it to you. It's just not going to happen. The Big Ten and the SEC will feel like they're being cheated, which they have the same amount of teams, but it doesn't matter. It's not about that. I think that makes the most sense because then you eliminate the committee basically deciding. And yeah, you might miss out on some of the best teams if they're like a 4 or a 5 in the SEC, and you might end up with some teams from the Big 12 or the ACC that aren't as good as those teams from the SEC or the Big 10 might have been. Who cares? Now you've got equal representation from every conference. Let them duke it out. Let them go at it. Those top 3 from every conference, they all get the same chance. Record 0-0. Tournament start. Let's see it. That's what I think is probably the best case scenario. 4-4-2-2-1 isn't ideal, but then you're at least guaranteed, and this feels like a little bit of like a let's mitigate damage situation, but at least then you don't have 6, 7, 8 teams from the SEC in, or same thing for the Big Ten, or whatever the case is. You don't end up with a weirdly lopsided just SEC Big Ten tournament with one Big 12 school, and then maybe they sneak one in at 16. So for Iowa State, I think to have the best chance. Now, I guess what I answered first there was my thoughts on which one's better. I think the 4-4-2-2-1 or 3-3-3-3-1 is better. But I think for Iowa State, it is also that. I think Iowa State needs to have a fair chance to get in. And you have to take a look in the mirror before you comment down below and say that I'm completely wrong, and say, would Iowa State be treated the same way, even second or third in the conference, as an Ole Miss would at 7th in the SEC, right? Or let's say Tennessee at 9 or something ridiculous. But they had a couple weird losses that dropped their conference standing. And so when we get out to that 16th bid, Iowa State, decent record. Well, who did they play in the Big 12? Tennessee, they're in the SEC. They lost a few games, but they only lost to teams within the top 5. And it was by a combined 17 points, over those course of those games. They might have lost 5 games, but, it was only by an average of about a field goal, and they play in the SEC. Are you telling me this is a weirdly specific scenario that I just came up with off the top of my head, but are you telling me that they're going to lean Iowa State's way, even if Iowa State is sitting there with maybe 3 losses to Tennessee's 5? Like, you need to legitimately make that decision before you tell me that this doesn't make any sense, because I had completely forgotten that the SEC and the Big Ten are just going to get every nod. Iowa State being in the Big 12, I don't think it's more advantageous for them. I don't think it is. I'll be completely honest. I don't think it makes more sense for them to try to get into basically the top 16 or win the Big 12. Why not just win the Big 12 or be one of the top 3 teams in the Big 12? Or win this play-in tournament or whatever we end up having. I think it provides Iowa State more opportunity to get in. I don't like it more necessarily because, well, I do, but not more than a utopia 5+11. I just think that you can't act under the assumption that Iowa State would be treated fairly all year long, let alone if they made it to like that last week and were teetering. I just don't think you could look at the committee and then say, yeah, they'll treat Iowa State with a fair amount of respect and fairness in this decision. They're not going to pick an SEC team over Iowa State. You can't say that. It's not what's going to happen. Let me know if you disagree down below or on Twitter at Nick_Marv. I check that every day. Also, shoot me a question. Any one of you that shoots me a question, I will answer it on the show, provided it makes sense. That's it for today, folks. Hitting subscribe is free. Helps you prove it's a Cyclone state. You can be a part of the movement. We're almost at 800. Very impressive, guys. Shout out to you all for all that good hard work. I'll see you tomorrow for Farmageddon Friday. Until next time, Cyclone fans. Sayonara.